Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is your girl Sashan with Bible Passion, and today I'm here with another video. This is actually a part 2 of the video that I did last week. Now the video that I did last week is based on the same scripture, 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 7. Now we're reading from verse 7 today. We're just backdropping a little, but I did it in the last video. This is actually a part 2. This is a part 2 of what I did last week, and last week's title was Good Speech That Is Unspeakable. Now, before I get into it, let us pray. Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for your grace. I thank you for your mercies. I thank you for all you have done and what you will do, God. Take full control today as I may do what I have to do. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, I say amen. Now, I just want to get into this video. Now, today's title will be Grace for the Thorns in Our Flesh. That's Grace for the Thorns in Our Flesh. Now, last week I did a video, Good Speech That Is Unspeakable. Now, that video was all about the fact that Paul was caught up into heaven. He had seen things that are unspeakable. He heard things and he had seen things that he didn't want to repeat, because guess what, he didn't want the apostles to think of him more highly than others. And okay, I'm gonna get into all of that. I'm gonna backdrop a little bit, but now I'm just going to get into what I have here, and as we go through, I pray that we all will get the picture of what Paul is saying. Now, before I go any further, you see, for this teaching, many might understand, and I know many would want to understand, right? And I know, again, many would want to understand. Many would want to know that God is well in tune to our thorns. Because sometimes, if we can be honest, some of us might not know. But many a times, many a times, the thorns sometimes are placed in our life by God on purpose. And sometimes our thorns is a result of choices we made. Sometimes our thorns are results of choices that we have made. Right? So let's get right into it. Now I'm going to read in verse 7 right here. But let me go back. Let me backdrop a little. As I said before, I just want to take you back. I just want to take you back little from what we did last week. I just want to go back a little from what we did last week. So let's turn our Bibles to 2 Corinthians 12, and we're going to backdrop a little. So verse 7 said, Unless I should be exalted above measures through the abundance of the revelation, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measures. Now, we all know, I'm going to read it again, lest I should be exalted above measure. Lest I should exalt myself, I, Paul, should exalt myself above measures through the abundance of the revelation, there was given a thorn in my flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me. Now we know that Paul is talking about the revelation, that he was caught up in heaven and how he saw things that are unspeakable. We know how he didn't want the other apostles or other person to think that because he saw and hear other things, because he saw and heard things that they didn't see and hear, they think of him more highly than others. But when we go down to, let me go down to verse 5, not verse 5. Let me go down to verse 8, sorry. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. For my strength is made perfect in weakness. Now, I just want you to have a little insight as to where I'm going. Now, again, we know, as I said, let me backdrop a little bit. Now, because we know that Paul had seen the vision, right? Paul had seen the vision, and he would have said before, lest I should exalt myself above measures in verse 7. Before that, he would have said, he said, lest any man should exalt me above measures through the abundance of the revelation. Lest any man should exalt me above measures based on the revelation that he got. He didn't say anything because he didn't want anyone to exalt him above measures. But when we reach to verse 7 again, he said, lest I myself, Paul, should exalt myself above measure, there was given to me a thorn in my flesh. And I believe what Paul is saying right there is not Paul, but God. God is saying, but Paul, because I don't want you to exalt yourself above measures, I'm going to give you a thorn in your flesh. Right? And what I understand from that statement is, many a times we exalting ourselves doesn't come from our mouth, but God who knows the heart, and I'm going to get right into it. Now, I believe what's happening here is God is saying, but Paul, because I don't want you to sit and say, look at them talking. Just look at them talking and see. Look at them going on and look at them going on. I have seen many things. I know many things that you haven't seen. Like, I'm saying practical, like what would actually happen in life. How I would have seen some things and like I would know some things and I boast in myself when I see others, doing their thing and doing whatever they're doing, and I'm like sitting there, and because I know what I know, I can just say in my heart, look at them. Let's be real now. I can just say, look at them showing off and going on. The amount of things that I see that you didn't see. The amount of stuff that I know that you don't know. And so God is saying, lest you, Paul, should exalt yourself above measures, you are going to get a thorn in your flesh. The Bible said it just the way. Lest I, Paul, should exalt myself above measures, I was given a thorn in my flesh. Now, what God is clearly stating and why he has given Paul the thorn in his flesh is because he doesn't want Paul to think more than he is. Paul himself don't want the apostles to think that he is more than he is, so he will not say anything about the vision. He hadn't said anything about the vision until today because he don't want them to exalt him above measures. Now he is saying, lest I, Paul, should exalt myself above measures, there was given to me a thorn in my flesh. And as I would have said before, Paul wouldn't be saying such things out loud. He wouldn't be saying, I know what I know and you guys don't know anything. And just as though you would sit and boast to yourself or boast in your heart. Because remember, Paul did not say anything out loud. And just to be clear, the Bible didn't say he said those things. The Bible didn't say he boasts in his heart or anything like that. I'm just using an analogy to say, because God doesn't want him to think of himself more highly, because that is how you think of yourself more highly than others. If it is a case that you're not going to say the thing, or you're not going to show off, or you're not going to use your mouth, then yes, in your heart, and God alone sees a heart. So now, as again, let me be clear, the Bible didn't say he said those things. No, because the Lord didn't want him to exalt himself above measures, he was given a thorn in his flesh. Because the Lord didn't want Paul to feel he is better than the others in himself. And we know that when a person boasts, like I said before, 99% of the time, when persons are boasting, is with our mouth. 1% is normally like walking and showing off and all of that stuff. But in the heart, who knows but God? Who knows what's in the heart but God? So he can see what is happening and he can see what is going to happen. So he gives him a thorn in his flesh. And again, I'm going to be clear. I'm not saying that God saw in Paul's heart that he would boast or anything like that. The Bible said, lest I, Paul, should exalt myself, lest I should exalt myself, meaning should, he didn't. But lest he should, lest he would want to exalt himself, there was a thorn given to him in his flesh. Now, Paul said, the point that I'm trying to make, this was just a backdrop of what I did last week. Now, the point, what I'm trying to make, Paul said, for this thing, I besought the Lord thrice to remove it, and the Lord replied, my grace is sufficient to keep thee, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Paul besought the Lord thrice to take away the thorn from his flesh, and he said, my strength is sufficient to keep thee, for my strength is made perfect when you're weak. I don't know if anyone has ever gotten an answer like that from God. And before I say anything else, let me just be clear. Let me be clear and honest. Personally, this is not the answer I would want to hear. This is not the answer I would want to hear if there's a thorn in my flesh. And let me tell you why. Now, how many of us know what is a thorn? No, I'm smiling because, like, I don't know if anyone knows, but I believe that persons will know, because let me tell you. Now, Google have many definitions of a thorn. Now, I chose one. And it says something that causes distress or irritation. They say this one is often used in the phrase thorn in one's side. That is exactly what was happening to Paul. That is the phrase that you use this one for, something that causes distress or irritation. Now this tells me Paul was going through sorrow and pain, because that is what distress means. Distress means extreme sorrow or pain. And I know no one would like to be living in such state, in a state of distress, sorrow, or pain. Now, the truth of the matter is, we are not sure. Like, I was not sure if the thorn was a sickness or not, because thorns can be other things or even people. But the word buffet means to strike repeatedly, like as waves would buffet the shore. And then the word infirmity allows me to conclude it was sickness. Now, this sickness was given Paul distress and sorrow. Now, if anyone at all can tell me that they are okay living in distress and sorrow, this had to be something extreme, as I would say the word extreme, because distress means extreme sorrow or pain. So we know, judging from the words used, we know that Paul was going through distress, sorrow, and pain, a state that none of us would want to live in. And I besought the Lord thrice to have that removed from me, and he said, my grace is sufficient to keep thee, for my grace is made perfect when my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Now, with this understanding, that I've gathered and said that it is a sickness. No, we're all here to learn. And if anyone would like to tell me like otherwise or teach me something, sure, I would love to learn more. So feel free. You can feel free to help me, to teach me. I don't have a problem. No, but yes. So when you sought the Lord because of a distress, this pain and sorrow repeatedly in your life, every day you sought the Lord because of this pain and distress that is in your life. Every day you have to endure it. Every day you have to go through it, and you sought the Lord thrice. Right? This thing keeps bothering you, and you go to the only person you know that can take away. And he answered, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. He answered, my strength is made perfect in weakness, and my grace is sufficient to keep me. Tell me, it's sufficient to keep me. Tell me if you wouldn't like feel away, because as I said it before, this is not the answer that I would want. But I want you to zoom in on something here. It's until I read and understand the next sentence that I know that Paul had joy in the infirmities. Let us read. And the next sentence goes like this. Most gladly, I would rather glory in mine infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. No, we don't want the thorn. We don't want the thorn. Let me read again. Most gladly, I would rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Most gladly, I would rather glory in mine infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. I need someone to get what I'm saying here. Most gladly, I would rather glory in mine infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. No, we don't want the thorn. And I think it is more than safe to say Paul didn't want it either. Because he besought the Lord thrice. Because he besought the Lord thrice. He wanted it to be removed. He wanted it to be removed because he besought the Lord thrice that it might remove from him. And I believe that it was until he found out that grace is rest upon him while he have the thorn in his flesh. I want you to get what I'm saying. Paul realized that though I'm sick, it's not unto death. I will not die. Because through the thorns are in my life. Because through the thorns are in my life, the grace of God is more abundant upon me. It's rested on me every day, everywhere I go. The grace is what's keeping me alive. Again, I want you to look at what I read. Most gladly, I would rather glory in mine infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Again, we don't want the thorns. We don't want the thorns. But Paul realized that though I'm sick, through the thorn, though I'm sick, it's not unto death. I will not die. And my life, the grace of God is more abundant in my life because of the thorn. The grace of God is rested on me every day, everywhere I go. The grace is what's keeping me alive, though I have the thorn. And many of us right now, we should give thanks for the grace, because many of us walking around and not looking like what we've been through or what we are currently going through. Why? Because of the grace. Because of the grace. Grace covers it. Grace covers it. Let me continue. Paul goes on to say in verse 10, therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecution, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. For when I am weak, I am strong. Again, I don't remember if you remember what I just read about distress. The thorns, the meaning that I got from Google about the thorn that Paul was going through is extreme sorrow and distress. So that tells you, because Paul said it again. Paul goes on to say in verse 10, therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessity, in persecution, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. Paul is saying, I will take pleasure when in sickness. I will take pleasure when every bad thing is happening. I will take pleasure when things are going wrong. I will take pleasure for every bad thing that is happening in my life. I will take pleasure in them because God will be present. It is when I'm going through my going through that God is present. It is when I'm going through my going through that God will give me grace to go through. It is when I'm going through my going through that His grace will be rest upon me. It is when I'm going through my going through that God will come through. That is what Paul is saying. Paul is saying, when I don't know the way, He will make a way. When I don't know the right thing to say, He will make the speech. And when I can't fight for myself, He will fight for me. When I'm weak, I am strong. Paul said in Philippians, whatever state I am in, I am going to be content. And I believe that this was what Paul was talking about, because he knows that whatever state, once it is a bad state, God is present. When I'm weak, then I am strong. I'm not saying that God is not present in a good state. No, you will understand further why I'm saying this. No, the Lord is telling us, only the sick needs a doctor. Only if you ask a question, you will get an answer. And why I'm saying this is because many of us, when we get the blessing and we're going through life, we think we don't need God again. Right? When we face our trials, that is when we believe we need God. Because at that time, we want the grace to go through. But let me go again. Many of us, when we get the blessings and we are going through life, some of the time it's not even, let's say, a blessing, but because it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be alive, but sometimes it's not even anything great that is happening in our life. We're just going about because we're alive and well and we're healthy, and we believe that in this moment I don't need God. But Paul is telling us plain. Paul is telling us plain that it's best when we face trials and weakness, because at that time is when God works. That's when you know that He is near and on your side. If you're healthy and well, you don't need healing, and that is right. If you're healthy and well, you don't need healing. If something is not broken, it don't need fixing. And many persons who are out living, turning up, they think they don't need God because there's nothing broken to fix. Paul said, no, I will take the trials. Give me everything that's bad. Because in times like these, God moves. He needs something. That way He moves. And I understand what Paul is saying, and I pray that many of us understand what Paul is saying, the point that Paul is trying to make. What Paul is exactly trying to say is that it is better when we have trials and tribulations. It is better when we go through persecution. It is better when things are not going right in our life, because that is the time when God will step in and do a work. That is the time. If you notice in the Bible, when God heals someone, He cannot heal a man who is already healthy. He cannot fix someone or fix something that doesn't need fixing. And that's what Paul is saying. Paul is saying, because the Lord had told me that the grace is sufficient to keep me and his strength is made perfect when I'm weak. So Paul is saying, I'd rather be weak every day. Paul is saying, I would rather be weak every day, that I know that the strength of the Lord is rest upon me. The grace is rest upon me. His power is overshadowing me. His power is giving me strength to stand alive. Because I'm going to tell you something. I have a testimony. My grandfather died earlier this year. He died on March the 23rd. And I'm going to tell you, I miss him so much. I miss him so much. The space that was in my house that he used to occupy, he's no longer there. And every time I enter, I always look for him. But let me not go to all of that. I'm just going to tell you my point that I'm trying to tell you. At that time, I was going through a situation. And honestly, I didn't feel as if God was anywhere near me. I didn't feel as if he was anywhere near me. And when my grandfather died, I felt like, yes, I was going to go through some things in my life. Like, as I was going to just say some things or all of that stuff. And like I'm telling you, I didn't even get the opportunity to see the persons. I didn't even get the opportunity to see the persons who would want to come to me to at least allow me to go on the other side. Let me tell you plainly, I didn't even saw those persons. When they came to my house, as I said, I was going through a situation. When those persons came, I was not there. The Lord made sure of it that I wasn't there. Right? And sometimes it is good to not be present in a moment. Sometimes it saves our spirit. And I'm telling you, when my grandfather died and I came home and I heard, like, I felt the peace of God overshadowing me. I felt the peace of God I felt the peace of God so abundant and evident in my life. I felt it that my grandpa died, but it's like I felt no form of burden. I felt nothing that would want to keep me down. I felt nothing that would want to let me regret. I felt nothing like that. I felt the peace of God in my life. And I'm telling you, I was going through a time where I feel like God was not near. And when I felt that peace in that moment, I said, God, you are actually present. You are actually present in my life. And that is exactly what Paul is trying to say. If you are not broken, you do not need fix. And Paul is saying, I would rather be broken. I would rather be weak. I would rather have the trials and the tribulations. I would rather keep the thorns in my flesh to know that God's grace will carry me through every situation, will carry me through everywhere that I want to go, because the grace is rest upon me. His power is rest upon me. Paul is saying, I don't want to do anything on my own right now. I want to be broken. I want to go through persecution. I want to go through trials. I want the testing. I want the temptation. I want broken things in my life. I want all of them bad things to happen in my life, because that is when I know that God is present. You know how he said every test and temptation that he gave you a way of escape. You know that God is working when you're going through trials and testing. And Paul is confirming that again. So let me tell you, it is good. It is good when you feel as if your life is going and everything is going nice and smooth and you don't have any problem, you don't have any trials. Life can be good in those moments. Life can be good at that point. Life can be good. And you're doing what is it that you want to do, because you do not have anything to fix. And I'm going to tell you, many a times when we know, as Paul would said, when we know that God is working out in our life, it's when something is going right, when you want it to go left. That is when God come and take that thing from the right and take it to left, and that is the time when you know that God is on your side. That is the time when you know that God is actually working, and you always want to work. Because I heard someone sing a song, Jermaine Edwards, and he said, I love that song so much. He said that there's a peace in my soul when I'm with you. There's a peace in my soul when my spirit is in tune. You know that there is a peace in your soul when you know that God is doing in your life, when you know that God is present, when you know that God is near, when you know that God is working. And I'm saying to somebody today, the trials and the testing will come. They will come. Paul said, I would rather glory in my infirmities. And it is the sad truth. It is the hard truth for many of us to accept, because we don't want infirmities, and we don't want trials, and we don't want persecution, and we don't want thorns, and we do not want to have any hardship. But it's through the hardship that good will come. It is through the hardship that you will know the God that you serve. It is through the hardship that you will experience God for yourself. Again, if there is nothing broken, God cannot fix it. When Jesus was walking the earth and doing all of those things, remember, if he wasn't showing up, if he wasn't working miracles, if he wasn't doing the things that he was supposed to do, and was just doing what a regular man would do, then a lot of person wouldn't just follow him. A lot of person wouldn't just follow him. And he healed the blind, he healed the sick, he raised the dead, the lame walk, he turned water into wine. He did those miracles just to show. And again, we must know that the thorns in our flesh is necessary. It is necessary for God to do a work. It is necessary for God to show up. It's necessary for God to be present in our life. And that is the truth. Now, this might offend people, but the thorns, again, it's necessary. I must say the truth. It is necessary, even for myself, because I have to say it for me to believe it. And I have to practice what I preach, because I've gone through many things in my life. I've gone through many things in my life. I've gone through times in my life where I have to say, God, I have no hope that something good is going to come next, because it's just been an episode of things one after another, one after another, one after. And I'm like, God, ease me up. When is it that I'm going to see peace, a life with peace? And for myself, I understand when I fast, when I pray, when I'm going through and I fast and I pray, then I feel God near. So I understand what Paul is trying to say. And I hope many of us today will understand what I'm trying to say in regards to this revelation. Now, this would be my last point. This is going to be my last point. Many of us don't want the thorns in our flesh. We don't want the thorns. But this is something that I want you to take clean understanding to. When you are chosen for a purpose, he said, many are called, but few are chosen. When you are chosen for a time like this, because I had to go through my go-through to be sitting here to talk to you like this. It wasn't just overnight. I had to go through my go-through just to be here today talking to you like this. Now, when you are chosen for a purpose in a time like this, persecution, trials, temptation, everything will come to you at some point. And many of us might not be given thorns because of boasting, but we may, because these things, trials, persecutions, temptations, distress, sorrow, many of these things will make some of us leave the kingdom. And this is the truth. temptations and trials, persecution and distress will make many of us leave the kingdom. But God will give thorns. God will give thorns to have us remain if He must. He will give many of us thorns in our life to have us remain, because the work must be done. And once you're chosen, the work must be done. And I know many persons doesn't want to hear this, but I know on the other hand, many persons can testify that they haven't left the kingdom because of things that they are going through. They haven't left the kingdom because of things that had happened to them. They don't want to leave. They hadn't left. And I just want to tell some person today, just let us try and develop a Paul spirit. I know it's hard, but let us try develop a Paul spirit that we will glory in bad times. That because the Spirit of God rests upon us in our trials, let us develop a Paul spirit that we will be able to glory in rough times and tough times and times of trials and our thorns and our distress. Let us develop a Paul spirit that we will glory in our infirmities, that we will glory rather than want to leave, that we will glory rather than want to say, God, what is this? Because we know His strength is made perfect when we are weak. Again, a healthy man don't need a doctor. And if you're sick, you need a doctor. And when things are broken, when things need fixing, God show up. Don't even think that God is going to come and heal a man that is already healthy. He already had said in His word, He has come for sinners and not for a righteous man. A righteous man falls 7 times and get up because he knows better. The sinner man keeps sinning every day because he needs a teacher. He is broken and he needs fixing. So He has come for those persons, and He will come through for you if you remain. If you remain. Because many of us, we can be going through some things and we turn to other things. We don't remain. We leave, as I said, we leave because the trials and the temptations in our life, we leave. And let us not do that. Let us turn to God, the only man who can take away the thorns in our flesh. And if He doesn't, His grace is sufficient to keep us, for His strength is made perfect in our weakness. Remember, His grace is made perfect in our weakness. This is the end of the video, and I hope you all will watch and understand. Please comment, share, remember to subscribe, and this is always an opportunity to give someone to come to God, to find out what is missing. Because if you're not in Christ, you're missing. You might think that you're not missing, but I tell you, this is the place that I've been for years, that have changed me, that have allowed me to grow, that have allowed me to succeed and to do things that I've never ever dreamt that I could have done. And I thank God every day. So please, if you have not yet found yourself in a church, find yourself a church, try God. Give Him a try. Let me tell you, I will tell you what others don't want to tell you. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a hard road to travel, a mighty long way to go. But Jesus, the blessed Savior, will be there to carry us through. He will be there to carry. If you just stay with Him, stay in tune, the Lord will make a way at all times. And be blessed until my next video. Happy weekend.